Harvard is not a university. It's a business. Harvard University is run by a 12-person board that's known as through the Harvard Corporation. The Harvard Corporation is what runs Harvard University. And the head of the Harvard Corporation is Penny Pritzker. Penny Pritzker was previously the chair of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. If that sounds familiar, it's because that's the organization that was run for 7 years by Bill Burns, the man elected by Joe Biden to be the head of the Central Intelligence Agency. Harvard is essentially a foreign policy tool that merges financial markets with intelligence and statecraft to impact global policy, foreign policy, and the domestic drivers of foreign policy, which include running out a president who might oppose a foreign policy that interferes with Harvard's bottom line. Harvard invests deeply and has since the Cold War ended. Harvard has been deeply invested through the Harvard Endowment in seizing Eurasia from Russia, which puts Harvard directly at the center of Russiagate. In the 1990s, everyone can look up a great article called "The Harvard Boys Do Russia," or any deep dive you want to go down on a little place called the Harvard Institute for International Development, and its role in privatizing and stealing the wealth of Central and Eastern European countries, and particularly Russia, during the 1990s, if that name sounds familiar, the Harvard Institute for International Development may sound a little bit like the United States Agency for International Development, USAID. Harvard had its own USAID cell that got $500 million from USAID to be the long arm of USAID to loot the economic wealth of Russia in the 1990s in tandem with George Soros. Harvard was doing the dirty work of the U.S. government by putting its economists over there, by putting its liaisons over there, by building up a giant network over there, midwifing that process. And in return, the Harvard Endowment got non-competitive bids and private access at fire sale prices to the publicly held wealth of foreign countries. They did the same thing in Ukraine. They did the same thing all over Central and Eastern Europe. If there is neutrality with Russia, all of those assets and investments are threatened to go in the tank. Now, because the Harvard senior leadership and elite class has been completely merged with the CIA, the State Department, and the Defense Department, and USAID for 7 decades now, there has never really been an inch of daylight between what Harvard has called for and what the Bush family or the Biden family or Obama family called for. As I mentioned, Penny Pritzker. It was the Pritzker family in Chicago that spawned Barack Obama. So what I'm getting at here is Harvard, through virtually every cell, from the Belfer Center to the Kennedy School to the Shorenstein Center to the Kennedy Center to the Berkman Klein Center, every single one of these is chock full of programs that go directly against, in fact, set up whole training modules and global networks to stop the agenda of the very government that is funding them. These people, we people, voted for that government. We are not voting to send our dollars to Harvard any longer. And on that, just one last thing, because we mentioned Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stephan and these other mob violence organizers, they were tightly involved with the Tesla takedowns. So while Harvard is getting $9 billion of your tax money, these people are glorifying and strategizing, actually helping strategize the direction of what is effectively, and I don't mean to throw this term around so I can try to soften it, but something somewhat adjacent to domestic terrorism: arson, intimidation, destruction of private property, all for the political purpose of removing someone who isn't even the president from being able to advise the president. This is the sort of stuff that Harvard does because Harvard builds these networks. They serve as a CIA back channel, a State Department back channel in foreign countries, so that when we topple the government of Yugoslavia, and then those same financial and corporate investors gobble up those assets, Harvard Endowment invests in those companies. So Harvard has these trainees and spawns and faculty members and professionals in their centers and institutes who organize these riots to topple governments so that the new government will be pliant and give everything to the corporations Harvard invests in. It's a giant racket, and we can't let them do that to our own country like they've done to dozens of countries around the world.